Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to today's conversation on Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sarah Jane. I am delighted to be joined by my two co-hosts. David, hi, welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
Because it's evening where we are.
Yeah, sorry. Or good morning or good afternoon.
And Scott, welcome.
Hey, thank you. And it's the afternoon in Boston at the moment.
And Scott's going to introduce our guest.
It is my extreme delight to bring to you Bina Di Livio. She is from the Toronto area in Hamilton, Canada. She and I met when we went to Peru on a trip. A group trip, which was absolutely fascinating, enlightening, and it's where I got to meet this fabulous woman. She's a practicing psychotherapist in Hamilton. She has a private practice. She is practicing on being the best possible version of herself, which is absolutely amazing, and her story is amazing. And I would love for her to be able to let you know who she is. Bina, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Quite the introduction. Well, as you said, I'm a psychotherapist and I'm based out of just outside of Toronto in the Hamilton area. And I've been practicing psychotherapy for just under 12 years. So it's been some time, and for me, psychotherapy is not just a job or a career. It's my purpose. It's what I'm meant to do this kind of work. And I just absolutely love it. And anything I can do in this realm of healing and helping and sharing is something that I'm all in for. Today, for today's topic, embracing the feminine and mystical, spiritual, psychedelic experiences. And I wanted to share with you all that the reason I chose this topic is because it deeply resonates with me, with my personal journey and with my work experiences. I grew up on a hobby farm and there were no neighborhood kids around. So I developed a very unique relationship with the animals and with nature, with our garden. They became my companions, my friends, and my teachers. And because of that, I naturally aligned my life and myself with the cycles of nature. Everything I did just evolved around the harvest. It evolved around, the birth of the bunnies and the chickens and everything. And, looking back, I realized my life at the time, the masculine and the feminine within me was perfectly aligned and balanced. Like it was in harmony. But then as I grew older, and, life kicked in and I had demands from school, from sports, navigating the corporate world and, dealing with life's challenges. I found that I was leaning a lot more on my masculine qualities. And it was necessary. Like I look back and I think that was a good thing because those qualities really helped me to succeed and to survive. But it wasn't until I started my own personal healing journey and spiritual journey that I realized how unbalanced my masculine and my feminine was, and that my feminine had been repressed. It needed nurturing. It needed to come up. It needed to rise to balance off with my masculine. And that's how my healing journey went. It was about balancing that and really looking at everything. Now, my personal healing journey wasn't easy. I went through 2 dark nights of the soul, followed by spiritual emergence. And even though I had had many mystical and spiritual experiences throughout my entire life, the ones that I had as an adult through this dark night of soul and through the spiritual emergence, they were the most transformative. And they really forced me to look at myself, both my light and my shadows. And I had to face my feminine, the light and the dark feminine. And it was beautiful. I was able to really heal, to balance it out. And now I look around, and as a mother and as a important it is for the feminine to be healed, to be balanced, and to be incorporated and to be embraced in all of us and all systems, not just for our individual healing, but for the collective and for the planet as a whole. So that's why I chose this topic.
And it's 100% certain that it's absolutely, we have to embrace the feminine and the masculine aspects of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a society today where women feel they have to compete with men, whereas we should be working together, and men aren't they've been sort of pushed into this realm of you have to be the provider, and it's very much they're having to stand in their masculine and not being able to connect with their feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So the world has become really unbalanced towards the masculine, and it's helping bring that balance back for all of us.
Yeah. And, when I look at the energies, I just want to clarify that it's not gender. It's an energy. And within all beings, there's that balance of the masculine and feminine. And I'm using that terminology because historically that's what was used to describe that kind of set of qualities. And it exists everywhere. And, the reason I'm saying we need to focus on the feminine, embrace the feminine, is because of exactly what you said. Like, we live in a patriarchal society, and a society that was built around and that honors and values the masculine traits like competitiveness, independence, self-sufficiency, strategic, and, knowing what the end result is, goal-oriented. And it's been wonderful because it has led to so many wonderful things, but it needs to be balanced out. And with the feminine coming into it, I see it more as allowing men to be men, because it is through the feminine that men are able to look into their darkness and to go deeper into their masculinity and not just focus on, I'm the breadwinner, therefore I am the man. No, there's more to it. There's more to providing. There's more to protecting. And I truly believe that men more than women need to embrace the feminine in order to be full, actualized, genuine men and not always posturing as men. And the women need it as well.
So there is a question that you ask your clients, your male clients, that I think everyone needs to hear, because I don't think it's ever asked. And that would be.
So the question I ask all my male clients, and as I say it now, I'm going to start asking my female clients this question too, is when did you become a man? And I'm going to ask that of the two of you here, David and Scott. You don't have to answer it, but I'm going to ask, when did you become a man? And what does that bring to mind? Again, you don't have to answer. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but.
That's what we're here for. David, I'll go first, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
She asked me that, and there was that little bit of, oh my God, when did that happen? There doesn't seem to be a ritual as there used to be of becoming a man. In different cultures, you have, different rituals where you become a man. But in the, whether it's going to church and, you being confirmation or however you want to view it. But for me, becoming a man was when I had my daughter, and then I lost my immortality when my youngest daughter became ill. And so within the space of about 5 years, not only did I become a man, or felt I had become one, at least my understanding of it, but then when my youngest daughter was stricken, it absolutely changed absolutely everything, how I viewed it, how I saw it, and what my role was. And that fortified who and what I've become. That's my story. But the other part of that is from here to here. And that's another whole journey, another whole story. David, could you answer that? It's a very tough question.
It's a really tough question, and I'm sitting here, and I'm not going to ignore it because I will answer it. But I just want to go back at the beginning where you said about connecting and aligning, because you lived your life with the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. We have to go back to that because we have come so far out of living naturally. We have been pulled away or allowed ourselves to be pulled away or pushed, whichever way you want to see it as, away from our natural living. So therefore, there is so much dis-ease within the body because we are so out of line. And getting back to nature is just, I just tell everybody, live your life like the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Have a fantastic summer, enjoy and everything. And then what you don't need, don't take into the winter. Drop like the leaves and let go. And then just hibernate for a little while and rest. And then in the spring, start sowing the seeds of what you want and nurture them in the summer. And the more we can live life like that, I think the more alignment we will become, because Mother Earth has got that balance. And if we just connect into that, we will also regain our balance, because the world's so off balance. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. When did I become a man? Being a Peter Pan figure, it's very hard to say when, because I don't know whether in some people's eyes whether I have become a man or not in their eyes. But it's really interesting. It's a question that I can't pinpoint. There's been parts in my lives where, like when I come up to 40 and thought, oh my goodness me, I'm now on the back end of my life at 40. And then I got to 60 and I thought, oh, I'm ready for the heap. And, that's me finished. And now I'm coming up to the next decade and I'm thinking, and I'm sitting here thinking, when did I become a man? What decision did I take? Or what happened? And I think it's a series for me. It's a series of events that has woke me up and said, oh, right, you're growing up now. You're understanding this. And that's the way I see it. I can't pinpoint it to one particular issue or time in my life where I said, I've become a man. At 16, I emigrated out to Australia on my own at the age of 16 with my parents' blessing. So maybe that was a time that I got out and I stood on my feet, and then I had to learn really what life is about. So maybe it was then that gave me the biggest trigger of becoming a man, I suppose.
Starting that hero's journey for you.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Sarah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, David. Was there more you wanted to say?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
And, I've never asked this of women, but I think it's important that we ask women as well now is, when did you become a man? When did you find your masculine qualities showing up?
And, it's a really good question. And I'd say that when I started working, not for my parents, that was, my parents had a small hotel. And so I sort of spent time working in that, doing waitressing and but that wasn't, it was stepping into if you like, the business world, working in retail. And I did eventually actually get to area manager level. And I was walking around it was a skirt suit, but with a shirt and a tie on.
Yeah.
And I stepped into that. And seriously, as shy as I was, I walked around with such confidence. That was the masculine aspect. But this is somebody who was so insecure. But because the company I worked for, it was a lighting company. They sold lighting in retail, but they were based within much bigger stores. So it was like a concession unit. And therefore, this big DIY store, and I was sort of walking with my really confident steps.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "We knew you were coming, Sarah. We could hear you," because my steps were so, but I still was able to work with, if you like, the compassion and understanding of the feminine. But I was very much in a masculine world. In spite of my insecurities, but I was good at what I did.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that there was that part of me that accepted I was really good at what I did, but there was that other aspect of mine, this whole thing's going to fall to pieces, sort of the insecurities. So it was all there. So yes, especially when I became the area manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that, all of you. I'd never asked a woman before. That's the first time. And I thought, it's important to ask, because when I talked and shared my introduction, I realized I was such a man, like with my sports and having my MBA and, in the corporate world, it's the masculine skills that are rewarded. It's how you succeed. And like you, I dress the part. Like I had the heels, but with the form-fitting skirt and then the jacket, and like everything was very rigid and tight and form-fitting, and the colors. I intentionally avoid colors like this, like lavender, like pink, like pastels. I intentionally avoided them because I did not want to be perceived as vulnerable. I didn't want to be perceived as weak, because that's how I believed the feminine was perceived. I mean, when I was working for a tier 1 consumer packaged goods company, I was flat out told that I needed to smile more. And I thought it was hilarious because both myself and my manager got the same feedback. And then we looked around and we realized, none of the men are smiling. Why do the women have to smile? Like, why do we have to smile more? But there's judgments there. And as women and myself, I neglected my feminine because I was afraid. I was afraid to be a woman. I did not feel safe enough. And I don't know how to describe that other than just a state of being. Like, it just wasn't okay to wear flowy dresses, to be a little more, not as assertive, just to be like, okay, we'll let it go and see what happens, sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's another aspect of this that I think really kind of begs itself, and that is when I work with men, in order for them, I try to explain to them that in order for them to be fully masculine, they have to find their inner feminine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, try telling a 260-pound biker dude that they've got to find their inner feminine, and it's not really going to be accepted necessarily all that much. Mm-hmm. But in my training, I worked with a yogini, with all of the Indian deities. Mm-hmm. And she brought to me, as I was going to do my meditations, all of the feminine goddesses. And I would be speaking in a language I didn't know, reciting the meditation, and those entities would come into play. I would see them. I asked her not to tell me anything about them. I did no research on them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to know anything. I just wanted to understand their full energy. And they brought so many different aspects and so many different feelings. And afterwards, I asked her, why only feminine goddesses? Why only feminine energy? She said, because you need to find it, that part of you. My girlfriend tells me I'm a bit Spockish, like Spock from Star Trek.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant.
Like pointy ears, and had there was no emotions involved. It was just logic. And there were always times that's how I approach things, through logic, through cause and effect, through linear thinking, through all of that, where emotion and compassion had no room or space for that. That's how I was raised. That's how I was shown. That's what a man was supposed to be. You never let emotion get in the way of things. That when you make decisions, it's always very A, B, C, and very logical.
Mm-hmm.
And coming into this practice of finding who I was and finding that distance between here and here, which was a million miles within me, and took me quite a while and a lot of therapy and a lot of classes and a lot of energies and a lot of self-healing, I found that I am a much better man because I have that balance within me, that balance of feminine and masculine. But each of us has those aspects, and when they're in balance, they really show in our relationships how we relate back and forth to those that are closest to us. And that's what I've found. So the question might be, when you're dealing with male clients, I'm putting this to you, Bina, is that when did you find your inner feminine?
You know what? That is the good question. I will be including that. You're 100% right. And I'm also going to be asking women that question. Like, I learned something from this little call here. I need to be asking the women these very questions as well. It isn't just for the men. Like when you talk and you shared what you shared, Scott, I think of the sacred marriage. And sacred marriage is an internal union, a union of, the opposites of the masculine and feminine, and we become whole. And when we become whole, we're able to kind of be in that divine state. And there are no emotions in the divine. There's only love. So when we're in that divine state of love, then we can be in love and we can dance with both our masculine and feminine. And when the time calls for the masculine, that's what we pull. When the time calls for the feminine, that's what we pull. Because balance isn't 50-50. Like, women are the embodiment of the feminine, and it's the essence of who we are. Like, our anima, as Carl Jung talks about for women, is who you are. And a lot of time historically and present day, because of the karmic trauma through generations of the feminine, is about not feeling safe. We have embodied the masculine to feel safe. And therefore, our animus, to use again Carl Jung's word, it's unstable. And for men, it isn't safe to be more feminine, because what they have been taught with, these initiations and these rituals that used to exist that have been completely eliminated, what they've been taught is a very, very shallow, unevolved characteristic of what a man is. It's competitiveness, it's combat, it's providing, but there's so much more depth to it. And, Thomas More talks about the dark eros, and eros is that life energy, that dark unknown that we have to go into, we have to dance with, and we have to face. And when we face our shadows and our darkness, there's a reason we don't want to, because it's uncomfortable. Maybe we have shame around it, or maybe we just don't like it. But the feminine by its nature, with its receptive qualities, allows us to look at ourselves, look at the really, really hard parts of ourselves with compassion, with love, and embrace it all without judgment. And once we do that, then we can have that sacred marriage. And as individuals, when you do that, I personally believe we give off that energy and we influence others, and others get affected by it. And, that's one of the things I love about my work, is that, it really appeals to the activist heart of mine. Like, I'm not going to go out there and, write policies and change policies and be a politician. That's not me. But I am changing the world one person at a time. And every client goes out there, and just by them being themselves is changing the world. Aside from the fact that, they're healing 7 generations back and 7 generations forward, which is what I believe, they're also changing their communities. They're changing their homes. Like, this is really important thing. And yeah, that's all.
I think it's so interesting, because I want to come back to a point you said about the male being so dominated and brainwashed, where we can't show emotions.
Yes.
It's not good for us to show emotions. And that has such an emotional effect on us. And it will have a physical effect on us as well, because everything's energy. It's going to take its toll one way or another. But there is so much, I know there's emotional health, should we say, in all walks of life, male and female. But the male seems to hold on and think, I can't cry. I have not been taught to this. I'm not crying, and I will stand firm. And it's like blocking out half of who you are. It's like disregarding 50% of who you are. So you're not kind of working or being on your full power within. And I think that I think there are more people becoming aware that are saying, okay, it's okay to let go, and finding those safe spaces. And there are groups where they're supporting the male to become more emotional, because that creates so much emotional disturbance within ourselves. And we're seeing that now really a lot more. But it's just so interesting. We are only half ourselves. Yeah. And if the male could say, I'm only half me, we need the other half, and then I'm the full package sort of thing. Yeah. And that way you could be so much stronger in what you're bringing through and what you are doing for this world or your family.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, you made a comment about how things are changing. And one of the ways that I'm witnessing change in this energy and this dynamic is through the psychedelics. And psychedelics is, it's having a resurgence. It's popular now. And in many places, it's becoming legalized. And a lot of the work I do is integrating these mystical psychedelic experiences. And I'm finding, and not just myself, also a lot of my, clients that I work with are doctors. They're medical doctors or psychiatrists. They're the ones that are legally allowed to do this. And they are doing this. They are a part of the study. And the feedback I'm getting from them is, Bina, it's scary, because they're lacking the feminine. And not just in the journey of the healing, but how the studies are being set up. So we have a very paternalistic, heroic approach to our medical system, to studies, to investigations. Like, there are processes to make these things legal, but the process is so highly linear and masculine that in a way it doesn't allow the essence, the beauty, and the magic. of the psychedelics to come through, because it is creating kind of a non-compliant patient, if you will, in the sense that when we have these studies set up and where the feminine is missing in it, we have this determined sense of what the end is supposed to be. Like, you're supposed to stop doing your drugs now. You're supposed to not be depressed now. Like, you're supposed to feel better now. Well, that creates a non-compliant client when you determine what the end result is, and that's wrong. With the feminine doesn't determine what the end result is and doesn't see that as non-compliant. It doesn't have this linear thing to it. It's more of like a poetic dance, if you will. So, of course, there are boundaries and there's safeties, but how it's being done and how it's being embraced through the receptive qualities of the feminine is missing. That said, psychedelics are powerful. They're beautiful energies and beautiful medicines. And there's so many incredible, wonderful people that are doing the work, and they know this. And I do see a change. Like, I see things going in the right direction, and I do see the feminine rising. And I specifically say the feminine rising because I don't subscribe to, down with the patriarchy. You'll never hear me say that, because, down with the patriarchy, to me, can easily be misunderstood as misandry. And misandry is no better than misogyny. It's the same thing. And quite frankly, I feel like the masculine is at a good place. The lack of balance is in raising the feminine.
Yeah.
Sara?
I'm thinking about sort of what David was saying, because it was sort of going through my head. It was just like, when we get told off as a child, especially if you're a really insecure child, and somebody tells you that something you're doing isn't good. I think, this is just a sense I get, that you're being told there's an aspect of you that people don't like. And if you're insecure, it's okay, I've got to shift that aspect of me out of me, away from me, ignore that part of me. So whether it's a masculine or feminine aspect is important but immaterial. It's we are disconnecting ourselves from an aspect of who we are. And if you wish to refer to that as being a shadow, then that is what it is. But to me, it's just an aspect of ourselves that has been incorrectly put to one side because somebody has said that aspect of you is not good enough.
Right.
And that's what's happened with, but even with big girls don't cry. It's not just a matter of big boys don't cry. Women have heard that too. Big girls don't cry.
Yeah.
Both have been mistreated, manipulated, abused in that way.
Yes.
And of course, that's another aspect of ourselves that, okay, I've got to get rid of that, especially if you're in people pleaser mode, which I spent too many years being it.
Yeah.
And it's how, and I hear what you're saying about the psychedelics, but is it working in some respects? Is there an aspect of helping people to get back those aspects so that they can be more complete to go through this?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Because even as you were speaking, there was an element of the masculine implied, because you were saying, I've got to get rid of that part of me. Whereas the feminine would say, what is this part? And would look at it with curiosity, with empathy, with compassion, and with love. Like, just that in and of itself is the difference between approaching with the masculine and feminine. So what the feminine does is allows you to look at that. So it allows you to look at, that child that is behaving in ways that we have decided in our society today that is not okay. And instead of saying, bad kid, you're behaving badly, or, you should be more involved, you shouldn't be shy, speak up, buckle up and do something. we look and we say, hey, what's going on here? I see this part of you, can I engage with that part of you? I'm curious, what is the purpose of it? Like, all aspects of ourself are not there to do us harm. They're there to help us. And, personality disorders, qualities that, aren't the nicest, I always look at them and I think, okay, how's that serving you? Like, is this a defense mechanism? What are you afraid of? What are you protecting yourself from? So I see the feminine as just embracing it with non-judgment and no time limit on it. Like, however long it takes, it takes. And if you don't get it, that's okay. We'll just keep coming at it with love, because all of us just want to protect ourselves. We all just want to be loved. And at some point in our life, a loved one hurt us. And we put our guard up because we didn't want to be hurt again.
So the question I have here is the ego mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the ego mind has much more of the masculine to it.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Than the feminine. Because it's about control.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that control can be a bad thing. It can be a good thing, but it sadly has tipped the scales towards actually being totally unbeneficial when it comes to the ego mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between being in control and being controlling. So that distortion that you speak of, to me, I interpret that as controlling. Like, when I want to be with a man, I want the man to put his hand out and say, I'm going this way. I'm in control. I'm taking care of it. Do you want to come with me? That's a man who's in control. A distorted, unhealthy, boy posturing as a man will grab a woman's hand and say, this is the way we're going. Follow me. So that's the difference I'm seeing. And unless I misinterpreted what you said, that's how I'm perceiving that. Yeah.
Well said and well put. One of the things that you would come out is if every 50-50 relationship, whether it's within yourself or in your marriage or in any relationship, is never 50-50. When you're taking care of your spouse, maybe it's 80-20, and other days it's 40-60. But there's always that ability to meet in the middle. There's always that ability to connect and the safety in the relationship. When I deal with clients, I talk about the inner masculine, inner feminine, and how they view it, how they see it internally. And it's amazing the responses you get when they close their eyes and they say, I say, okay, what is the pluperfect feminine? What does it look like within you? And then what does the pluperfect masculine look like? And when there is imbalance and when there is no communication, you see that their life has followed that. Whether it be through not understanding, through not being able to be on the same page, to I've talked to women who've been married 3 and 4 times, and they've been married to the same man, basically.
Yeah.
He changes his name. He's a little taller. He's a little shorter, but he marries the same thing. Man, because they never changed within themselves those aspects to correct it. I have a very good friend, lives in Florida, and we connected after a long time when we hadn't talked. And I was sitting with her one day, and I said, okay, I knew her in the 70s. Okay, that tells you how old I am, right? In the 70s in high school. And she was a feminist. In the 70s, feminist. She was women power. And I absolutely loved it. And she really brought that through all the way around. And I said, what does your inner feminine look like? And she said, not really sure, but pretty strong. I said, yes, I see you on a horse. And I see you with a shield, and I see you with a spear and a sword and a bow and arrow. And she said to me, yes, but I'm unlovable. I said, why do you say that? She said, because men will never come close to me. I said, okay, let's look at this. What does your inner masculine look like? She says, I can't see him. I said, I do. He's in the corner, curled up, afraid that he's going to be killed. It isn't that you're not lovable. I said, you're unapproachable. She said, I will not change for a man. What are you talking about? I said, no, I'm not asking you to change. What I am asking is for you to step off the horse, to put the shield down, within arm's reach, your spear down, your sword down. And now, maybe you can talk. So it isn't that she changed her ideal. She just changed that she could be approachable. 3 months later, she was in a relationship, like she said. She called me and said, I'm in the first adult relationship of my life. And she was 60 years old. Because she changed that aspect within her to be able to be vulnerable enough. Mm-hmm. Instead of ending the relationship before it ever got started, she would go on a first date and figure out how the relationship was going to end before she ever got there. Yeah. And she said, I'm just enjoying this, just being able to be with, and because she had solved that and really healed that within herself. And I use that because I think in all of us, and in me especially, finding those different aspects and being able to talk to one another and being in unison, whole within yourself, within myself, has allowed me to do the work that I do now, has allowed me to be in the relationship that I'm in, to be in and do this work and meet some incredible people, such as are on this screen today. Yeah. Simply because I have done that work. Mm-hmm. And anybody listening to this, by the way, when you do the work, sometimes it's unpleasant, sometimes it's really hard, but getting to know the real you and having that balance in your life will show in the rest of your life. The rest of your life becomes balance. It becomes in balance when it's in balance here. I didn't mean to kind of lecture, but I just wanted to just show that what you're saying has true implications for each and every person that's listening.
Yeah. You brought up a point and you mentioned the word feminism. I'd like to hear from everyone what their understanding of what that means.
David?
Me to go first. In my uneducated mind, in the 70s, when it was, like you say, Scott, it was all out there, the feminist movement, I saw it as the women coming up and standing up for themselves and saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I'm going to stand in my power. That's how I saw it. And I thought it was like a shift in culture where so much we had the traditions of where the woman was meant to be, where the wife was meant to be, the girlfriend was meant to be, and where the guy was meant to be and doing. And then in that change, in the late 60s, early 70s, this cultural change where feminism come up and says, we need to be recognized. This side needs to be recognized. I'm not to be down here or hiding in the corner. And I think it was a big uprising for the recognition of the feminine then. That's how I saw it. Yeah. It was a global, it was interesting. It was a global consciousness that seemed to all come up at the same time, all around the world. That was really fascinating.
I'm sort of like in full agreement with David. it's when it started, absolutely, because it was, you read those things that the reason the woman got married in white because she matched the washing machine and all the rest of it that went into the kitchen, and everything was white goods. And it was just like, and the woman should be tied to the kitchen sink and be the one person, because obviously I was born in the late 50s, so we're growing up in the 60s, and sort of I'm aware that my grandmother was a nurse, but as soon as she got married, she was no longer allowed to work. So I've got those, not memories, but those awarenesses of how women were treated. But obviously then when the Second World War came around, obviously that became very different. Women were very much expected to get out there and play their part. But then when all the men came back, it was no, the men have got to have the jobs back. And so it's hardly surprising that in the 60s and the 70s, there became that, it was an uprising. It's a sad thing that I feel today it's gone too far. I absolutely believe that we should be treated equally, but uniquely, because we're all unique individuals. So that's really, really important. So it's not a matter of I'm the same as everybody else. I am my own unique person, but there shouldn't be a difference between, certainly in business, how men and women are treated. We should be treated equally. And so I absolutely 100% agree about the equality, because that brings about the balance.
Yeah.
But I do feel there are some women that are taking this and almost actually chucking the masculine into the way they're going about it. And there's an imbalance in that. But that's my personal feeling about some of the things I'm hearing. And I don't listen to the news and I don't read newspapers, but sometimes you can't help but hear these things.
Yeah. And you bring up a very good point. And the reason I asked the question is because I'm noticing in media and everywhere that feminism is being used in place of misandry. Because feminism is about equality for all, regardless of your gender, your age, your ability, your cultural background, whether you're an animal or a human being. Feminism is about embracing everyone and all. And a lot of times feminism is being vilified because it's being mistaken for misandry. And there is misandry, like that is the shadow side. And, there are some women that are misandrous. And it's not right. And they're identifying as feminists, but they're not. That's misandry. And, that's why I asked the question, is because you never see that word. You see feminism and you see women saying, I'm not a feminist, as they walk, into their corporate office corner job with the clothes that they bought. Well, you are a feminist, because then you wouldn't be there and you wouldn't be able to use a credit card to buy all those things. So I wanted to be clear that there is a difference between feminism and misandry, and we're not seeing that enough. We're not seeing that distinction. And I just don't want people to misunderstand that and to turn from feminism, because we need to embrace it.
Can we step into the mystical experiences?
Yes.
We are actually sort of coming so close. I think this conversation has gone really deep, and I think it's been really brilliant.
Yeah.
But the mystical experiences, can you share what you actually mean? You've touched on psychedelics, but
yeah. So mystical experiences, and we all have them. Like, it doesn't need to come through psychedelics. It's that sense of when the unconscious becomes conscious. And there's this sense of feeling of unity, this noetic sense of knowing what reality really is, this sense of love, this sense of hope of what is going to happen. You feel different. You feel this connectiveness to everyone. And we all have these moments. It could be just, a time you're sitting there watching the sunrise. That could be a mystical moment for you. And the importance of having the feminine in these mystical moments is we don't know what their purpose is. So we are not meant to control them. And the masculine wants to control it. Like I've had people say to me, Bina, if I do 5 ayahuasca ceremonies, does that mean that I can do this and that? And I said, well, you can do 1 million ayahuasca ceremonies. It doesn't mean anything. Like your mystical experiences and the number that you have doesn't matter. It's about the quality of them, and how you integrate them into your life is not to determine exactly what they're meant to be, but to embrace them and allow them to come in and observe. And just observe and dance with them. And so because, if we accept and understand that what is truly important is invisible, the feminine qualities allows us to embrace the invisible so that it becomes visible when its time is right. Like you mentioned the ego on how it's a little more, masculine in how it wants to control. Well, I see the ego as the manager between the outside and the inside world, and it's trying to protect us. But, sometimes it gets a little too confident in its power, right? It gets a little too confident. Well, with these mystical experiences, because there's this sense of not really knowing what is happening in the invisible, in this divine timing, in this beautiful divine dimension, the ego can mess it up if it knew what it was doing. Like, one of my teachers said to me, Bina, you only need to know where to put your next step, and that's it. And sometimes it's only half a step. That's all you need to know, because your ego will mess it up. So this is one of the aspects, and there's many, where I believe it is important to embrace the feminine so that we don't mess it up, so that we are able to embrace it and truly live from it, because we don't know what it is. And when it does bring up our shadows or some of the parts of us that we don't like, instead of saying things like, oh, that was a bad experience, or that's awful, I'm never doing that again, we look at that with love, compassion, empathy, and we heal that so that we can integrate it and become more whole.
Love it. Love it.
So
my answer to your question, what is feminine?
Mm-hmm.
Feminism. It is looking at life through love and compassion rather than through structure and linear thinking and logic. It is that opposite. Mm-hmm. And to be able to have equity, I know that people don't necessarily like that, because equity means everybody reaches the same outcome. Well, we're all different. We want different things, but there is a equality in how we deal with one another. Yeah. And that's what I see. Yeah. I really want to thank you for bringing these aspects out. We don't often talk about them in these terms. David, do you have observation that you'd like to share?
I really think this is so important for so many people to hear and understand, because there's a lot of self-healing can happen if we just pulled ourselves in, and we can do so much self-healing. But if we just understood ourselves a bit more and knew that we had two sides to ourselves, for want of an expression, we have two parts, that male and feminine energy. The more we can pull that together, the more we will be at ease, the more our mind will be at ease, and possibly more of our environment can be at ease, and it is getting back. And I hope anybody who, whenever they tune in for this, I hope they just take a little bit of what you've said tonight or today and just made people think, okay, I'll bring the other part into me and balance everything up. And I can do so much healing for myself, although they may need guidance, from somebody like yourself. It's really it's such not easy, but it's such a technique that we could all benefit from and understand from. So I really hope people get to hear your story and get to understand they could do so much more for themselves as well.
Yeah. I agree with you. Like, a healer is meant to guide you and to show you how to heal yourself.
Yeah.
How does that saying go? When you find your guru, turn around and walk away. Like, right?
Yeah.
Because we are our own internal wisdom keepers. We are our own internal healers. We just need someone to show us, to validate us, to help us, to, sometimes we need someone to be the feminine and to hold that space for us and to say, no, you weren't bad. That was a defense mechanism. I still love you. Like, continuous positive regard and understanding what the purpose of everything we've done and every choice that we've made is. And when you look at that, you're able to embrace all aspects of yourself and, get into that ease that you spoke about.
Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you. And do you have anything that we haven't touched on that you might? I know there's only 75 points that you'd like to talk about, but
the scope of this is so big. I think my challenge was, how do I narrow this down to 1 hour? So I know I don't have anything else to add, I guess, other than, you are your own healer. Embrace all aspects of yourself. Love yourself. Know that, times where you made some choices that people would say were poor choices, there was a purpose for it. Look at it with compassion, with love, with empathy. Really embrace yourself.
Thank you. Miss Sara.
Oh, thank you, Bina. It's been a real pleasure. And I've just put your website into the chat, and I will make sure if people are watching the video on YouTube that it's there as well. And that's www.Bina Di Livio.
Di Livio. Yep.
Yes. So it's there, and it will be under the YouTube video as well. Thank you so much. This has been sort of fascinating, and I think it's made us all think. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So thank you very much indeed. Next week, I'm being joined by Carl Taylor, and he's going to be sharing Qigong and the intention of the mind, plus a transcendental meditation. So I hope you'll think about joining us for that. And just a quick mention to you, we're actually going to have Patricia Kerrins back on the program in December, who was my co-host for a while, but she's going to be our guest for our 12th of December. And I know we've got a guest sort of at Marjorie's Bambrick's back with us sort of at the end of this month as well. So I hope that you'll join us for more of these today's conversation programs and check out the rest of Gift of Healing TV as well. Thank you, Bina. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, David. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you for having me and for inviting me. I appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure. It really is. Thank you for sharing. And I hope you've enjoyed the experience. So.
I did. This is my first. So thank you.
Yeah, a pleasure. You did brilliantly. You really did. So thank you, folks. Take care. Be safe. Stay well. Namaste, sweet souls.